This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-630-1410. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Good morning, Transportation Committee members. Today is March 2025. The meeting is now called to order. At this time, I'd like to ensure that we have quorum. Ed?
We show a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Very good. And I've asked Linda Krupa to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please stand.
Please stand and salute to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So at this time, I will open the public comment period of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak at this time?
We show no members of the public here this morning, Mr. Chair. We also did not receive any written comments either prior to or after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ruben. Has a recommendation on how we organize today's agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Transportation Committee. Your agenda today shows 4 items on consent along with 2 action items, both of which will garner a presentation from staff. I've recommended to the chair, and with his permission, would like to ask whether out of efficiency's sake, we could reorder the agenda to take action item number 5, which is approval of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program guidelines, along with item number 6, the report on that, which is the Regional Active Transportation Program. Take both those items, staff reports, public comment, of course, and then if the committee has questions and or debate, take that and then combine all of those for one vote along with the consent calendar. With your permission, Mr. Chair.
Yes. So rather than taking 3 separate votes with perhaps 70 plus members, we're going to go ahead and take them all together. They will still be, if they're a nay or an abstention, they could still identify which
Absolutely.
item that they
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for pointing that out. If a member of the committee seeks to offer a different vote on any of the items, including on the consent calendar or items 5 and 6, please do note clearly for the record so that the clerk can record your vote if it's different than what we expect to be and hope to be a yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to go to agenda item 5, which is fiscal year 2026-27. As well as 27-28 on the STBG CMAQ program guidelines and call for project nominations. Warren Whitaker, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. All right, let me just make sure. All right. Great. Good morning. Sorry, Chair, can't even get the first part out. That's going to be a bad sign. Good morning, Chair Sandoval, Vice Chair Judge, and Transportation Committee members. Your action today will be a key milestone for SCAG, kicking off the largest dollar value call for project nominations ever done by this agency. In this presentation, I will lay out the background for your requested action today, including info on eligibility, the mechanics of the call process, what has changed for the current process, and what will happen following your action today. As noted here, SCAG is responsible for the selection of projects to be funded with both Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, or STBG, and Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, or CMAQ, federal funds. Historically, this was the responsibility of the county transportation commissions. In fact, they conducted this process for most of the last 3 decades at the county level. That changed with our most recent federal certification review in 2022. The SCAG region, along with other areas across California, were found to not be in compliance with federal requirements. Our federally approved compliance action plan considered the legacy role of the county transportation commissions, while also ensuring that SCAG is ultimately responsible for project selection. The program guidelines and call for project nomination process for your consideration today is the second cycle for SCAG. The first cycle started with the federal approval of the Compliance Action Plan and included the milestone of Regional Council approval program guidelines in June 2023. That first cycle completed with the Regional Council's approval in June 2024 of 33 projects for nearly $190 million in federal funding and programming those projects into the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, or FTIP. This cycle includes considerably more money, an estimated $1.2 billion. This reflects the combined federal fiscal year 2027 and 2028 apportionment of STBG and CMAQ to the region. This and the next couple of slides highlight eligibility considerations. Eligible applicants for these federal funds include cities and counties, transit agencies, tribal governments, and county transportation commissions. I'd like to refer to page 5 in the program guidelines for additional details, including a link to factors to consider before applying for federal funds. Just to be clear, these are federal dollars. They're more complicated than what your typical dollars that you might use for projects, so it's important to consider that when you're developing applications. Projects must be eligible for STBG and or CMAQ funding. The STBG program is one of the most flexible federal highway funding sources in terms of eligible uses. CMAQ, on the other hand, is more restrictive and is focused on reducing emissions and congestion. Again, I refer you to the program guidelines on the top of page 6. It includes links for more information on STBG and CMAQ. This and the next slide serve dual purposes. They help to illustrate project eligibility, for example, alternative fuel and zero emission vehicle purchases, investments to make the transportation system more resilient to shocks and stressors, expanding transit, reducing traffic through ride sharing, and improving the flow of traffic. In addition to providing examples of project types, this is a sneak peek into project scoring that I'll come back to in a little bit. Closing out on the eligibility slides, here are other examples of activities that can be funded with CMAQ and or STBG dollars. I would like to note that Complete Streets includes active transportation projects like those funded under the ATP call for projects. In a few moments, Rachel will walk you through a lot more detail on that program. Additionally, natural lands preservation, which includes wildlife corridor crossings, think the 101 up in Ventura County, kind of their border with LA, as well as system preservation, including pavement rehab and replacement. Again, I'd like to point to several illustrative examples by category that can be found in Appendix B to the guidelines, and that's starting on page 13. So here's the mechanics of the call process. Put simply, SCAG kicks off the call. Applicants apply via the SCAG online application. The County Transportation Commissions review applications and determine priorities for their county. Then SCAG receives the projects, including the CTC prioritization info. And then the recommended project list is approved by the Regional Council through the Transportation Committee. So I want to go into a couple of the changes this cycle. In developing the program guidelines and process this time around, we applied lessons learned from the first cycle and streamlined the application process across the board. We took the opportunity to more directly use the call as an implementation tool for Connect SoCal 2024, as well as SCAG presidential and regional council priorities. We were also able to promote resilience as a priority. We are also ensuring that the call process more directly addresses federal requirements in advancing performance measures. The guidelines have also been updated in consideration of presidential executive orders and US DOT policy changes. Finally, we are also ensuring that the reduction of particulate matter 2.5 or PM 2.5 is prioritized when evaluating projects for CMAQ funding. Here's a side-by-side of the cycle 1 and current scoring criteria. As you can see, the possible points for each area remain the same, while we worked to streamline and clarify what each criterion is looking for. Before the online application opens, we will be holding workshops to help ensure applicants are ready to hit the ground running, that is, once the call officially opens at the end of this month. We are also working with the County Transportation Commissions to expand touch points, including joint county-specific workshops. Office hours with SCAG staff will be available every week in April. The next phase will start in mid-May when applications close and the County Transportation Commissions start their prioritization phase. SCAG will then take over the application reviews in August so that we can develop the recommendations for TC action and regional council action in November and December. The selected projects will then need to be programmed in the FTIP. We are looking for a recommendation that the Regional Council approve the federal fiscal year 2027 and 2028 STBG CMAQ program guidelines and authorize the executive director to initiate a call for project nominations consistent with the approved program guidelines. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we take questions and comments from committee members, I want to just check to see if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Okay. We're going to start with Larry McCollum and then Kurt Hagman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Question, the SCAG online portal for submitting the applications, do all the cities come through SCAG or do we go directly through the County Transportation Commission, or how does the application get to the Transportation Commission?
So it's a online application, and what we did this cycle, because ultimately the goal is for all of those projects that are selected to be programmed into the Federal Transportation Improvement Program or FTIP. So what we did is we actually built an additional module into our FTIP database so that you don't, like, your cities don't have to do the work twice. The county transportation commissions don't have to do the work twice. We collect that information, we put it into the application. The ones that are successful basically get pushed right into the FTIP. So it's an online database. You put the information in, and then once when it closes in mid-May, then the county transportation commissions will have access to the projects in their county. And then when they're done, then it goes, flows to us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Eggman.
Thank you. And I want to give staff kudos for trying to put this together. It's a whole new way of doing things, but I also, knowing that, and I brought this up a while back when it first came up last year, that this is a completely different way. So we're used to, if you're all in your transportation commissions, used to get a percentage of dollars for your population by county, and we compete within our county for those priorities. This is not that way. Your county, even though you may be number one in your county for a job, unlikely, but potentially one county gets all the funding for that cycle because they're at a higher criteria. So work with your transportation authorities. I think we all agreed to try this as fairly as possible, but we're dealing with a new set of rules and criteria to parse out the dollars. It's not going to be formula for the counties anymore. So this is competition based as a region, and that's what the Federal Transportation Administration wants us to do. And some of those projects that probably never made it on the list, I remember back in the days on city council, 57 to the 60 was around the edge of LA County, around the edge of San Bernardino County. No one wanted to touch that because it wasn't 100% their population. Those type of projects keep traffic flowing will probably get more points, the 71 to 91 south. So those different type of things, but it's a different set of lenses that we have to look through on this body going forward based on the corrective action by the FTA. And I hope I'm restating that correctly, but it's quite a bit different than what we're used to. It's a big change. We kind of just made it work last year to get what we had to be funded because it was kind of last minute, but this year is going to be a whole new criteria for grading and by need and by traffic flow and whatever those points are. Right? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Eggman. I'm not seeing any other hands up in the room. I don't see any virtually. Last call. Okay, and we will take this item up when we take consent and item 6. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. All right, let's go on to agenda item 6, which is the SCAG 2025 Regional Active Transportation Program. And Rachel Ohm, welcome.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for having me today here to talk about our 2025 Regional Active Transportation Program. All right, so I'll start off with an overview. So the 2025 ATP, also known as the Cycle 7 ATP, programs 4 years of funds, starting with fiscal year 25-26, which is starting later this year, and then through fiscal year 28-29. This cycle, we had approximately $169 million available across the whole state. So definitely a cut from previous years, but we're hoping that we'll continue to see investment in this program. So per the state guidelines and also legislation, this funding is distributed as follows, where about 60% is managed by the state through the California Transportation Commission. Half of that, so 50%, is allocated for a statewide competition, and then 10% is set aside for the small urban and rural areas, and then 40% of the funding goes to the top 10 metropolitan planning organizations like SCAG that have population greater than 200,000. So of the 40% that goes to MPOs, SCAG's regional share is approximately $35 million, the little over half as the MPO funds are distributed by population. So starting off with the statewide component, as many of you likely know, the way the ATP works is first applicants submit their projects to the statewide component, and then once the state goes through a process of evaluating all applications, anything that's not funded goes to the NPOs for that regional component. So starting with the statewide component, the state received 277 project applications, which is a total funding request of about $2.5 billion. And of those applications, 114 applications were from the SCAG region, requesting $1 billion in funding. So clearly significantly more than what's available. And this was certainly a very competitive cycle. So only 9 projects were selected through the statewide component. Fortunately, 3 of those were awarded within the SCAG region. And so that's the total cost or award of $36 million. So on the slides here, I've listed the 3 projects awarded through the statewide component. So one for San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, another award for LA County, and then also the city of Inglewood. So now getting into our regional ATP, as I mentioned, any projects that were not funded through that statewide component are then considered in our regional ATP. So from that statewide component, we have 111 applications that were considered. And then also within the state guidelines, MPOs are permitted to hold a supplemental call for projects as we develop our regional program. And so SCAG administers this through our Sustainable Communities Program, which Regional Council had approved in December of 2024. So through that process, just a reminder, we considered 29 applications that were submitted through that call. Just to kind of give the results initially, before getting to details, we were able to award 15 projects for ATP Cycle 7 using our full $35 million that's set aside for the SCAG region. We also have a contingency list of 113 projects that reflects an unfunded need of $972 million. The purpose of having this contingency list is such that if any project of those of the 15 projects that are awarded, let's say a project encounters some deliverability issues or there's some cost savings, we're able to then take that funding and keep it within our region, because otherwise, without a contingency list, that money would be going back to that whole statewide pot. So we're really making sure we can keep funding in our region. So a little bit about the process of how we got here. Last year, this committee and also our regional council reviewed and approved our regional guidelines, and it was developed in partnership with the 6 county transportation commissions. SCAG meets with the county transportation commissions on a regular basis through our ATP subcommittee. And so per our regional guidelines, we distribute funding as follows. 95% goes towards implementation projects, which are infrastructure or construction projects, and non-infrastructure projects, which are the education and engagement efforts. And then 5% of our regional funds go towards what we call the planning and capacity building projects. That includes the development of active transportation plans, quick build projects, and also encompasses non-infrastructure. The tie to our Sustainable Communities Program or our supplemental call is through that planning and capacity building project category. And the way our funding is distributed is through population-based funding targets. So again, in partnership with each of the counties, we're reviewing projects and awarding based on those population-based targets. So this table here, it's on page 79 of today's packet. It shows how the funding has been distributed, again, shaped by those population-based targets. The first or second column shows our implementation projects. As you'll see, the majority of funding is going towards those infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects. And then the third column has our planning and capacity building, which includes the plans, quick builds, and non-infrastructure projects. You'll see that there's a few counties that have an asterisk, and that's to show that while we're not showing funding on this table, because today we're talking about the regional ATP, those counties did receive funding through our Sustainable Communities Program. Those a different source, which are the federal Safe Streets and Roads for All, and also SCAG state funds that were serving as matching for the SS4A grant. So just a quick side note, our SCP always looks to leverage various funding sources to get funding out to the region. But again, today, just focusing on the ATP as this is for your recommendation for approval. And I'll just note that if in today's packet, that list of the 15 projects is on page 85, and our full contingency list starts on page 86. So wrapping up with a few key dates, leading up to today's meeting, we submitted our draft program to the commission as they need time to review all of our materials. Following today's recommendation for approval, we'll be going to Regional Council on April 3rd. And following that, we'll be submitting our final program to the commission. So throughout this whole process, we'll continue to coordinate with the commission to make sure all of our materials are correct and ready for submission, and also coordinate with our county transportation commissions. And then finally, in June, we anticipate the commission will adopt our MPO component, and then awardees will be able to request allocation as we'll be getting into the first fiscal year of this cycle. So thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Rachel, thank you for your presentation. Are there, first of all, let me just ask if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Not seeing any. Okay. I see your hands up, Mr. Hagman, but that may be from the last item. Yes.
I am Trish Kelly, City of Mission Viejo and TCA rep. I just, that was an interesting presentation. But we can see that there really is the demand for funding far exceeds the available funding. So I'm just thinking, with all the push in Connect SoCal to reduce VMT and to promote mobility through other forms of transportation, this demonstrates that local governments are trying to do the right thing. They're putting in their applications and doing their planning, but the funding isn't there to implement the active transportation that our local jurisdictions are seeking. So how do you propose, or what suggestions do you have for bridging that gap? You talked about other supplemental funding, but specifically for local governments, what do you recommend for bridging that gap in funding?
So certainly, overall, the ATP has been a primary source of active transportation funding. And as you can see, each cycle has been really oversubscribed and competitive. I think just, so advocating for more ATP funding and investments in that program is certainly a need. There's also a variety of other funding sources. I would say that the CMAQ program can certainly help fund ATP. And then just broadly, there's been some other funding sources, such as the Caltrans's Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant for planning efforts to be ready for implementation. So as SCAG staff, we're happy to be a resource to help think creatively about various funding sources, as the ATP is, the most straightforward, but there's other sources, even including the affordable housing, sustainable communities, ASIC program that can also help support active transportation. So I think it involves some creativity, which we can certainly be a resource.
If I can also further emphasize the fact that given Warren's presentation on the CMAQ STBG, that's an immediate opportunity. Most definitely active transportation projects are eligible. And so we do encourage jurisdictions to apply.
Yeah, I can just say that one more time. Not that you guys necessarily need me to hear that from me. Again, like I said, I did mention the ATP in there under that complete streets element. So it is one of the prioritized elements within the CMAQ STBG call for projects. Remember, it's 1.2 billion, which would totally cover the contingency list. If that was, ultimately RC and TC's desire to make that recommendation at the end of the day and the applications shake out that way. Obviously, there's a lot of other competing interests that might be in a call. But remember, we do that. That's a 2-year period. Rachel was talking about 5? 4. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot more money. And we're going to be doing this every odd year. So, we're doing this call. We'll be back in 2027. Likewise, probably in the neighborhood of $1 billion again. So given the demand for this type of investment, there is a ongoing revenue stream that can help implement the plan. And that's really how we ought to be looking at SVG CMAC, as well as the other programs like ATP. So thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I see 113 projects that were not funded. So that's good to have that additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen Wallace, you're up, and then Brian Fish.
I just want to say that was a good presentation, and I'm just happy to see City of Bannon on the contingency list. I just can't help myself. Whoop whoop.
I'll also add that the city of Banning received funding for a quick build project through the SCP. So not shown here today, but certainly did receive funding.
And I just want to make sure that in the meeting minutes that woo woo is captured. Very good. Mr. Fish.
Yeah, woo woo. Hi everyone, Bubba Fish, Culver City. Thanks for the presentation. I am curious about if the contingency rolls over in the 2027 cycle and what order is used. If it does roll over, is it state score? Is it MPO score? And yeah, I'm just curious how, or if the projects have to reapply. Thank you.
Sure. So the contingency list is active for that current cycle. So it'll be cycle 7. And then once we get to cycle 8, this time it'll be interesting. We're waiting to hear from the state how they will handle cycle 8. I think right now we've heard the funding might unfortunately be similar to cycle 7. So they might consider looking at cycle 7 applications. So it's all to be determined. The commission will be doing workshops later. But for the contingency list, this is SCAG specific. And so within cycle 7, let's say LA County has a project where one of their 15 funded projects has an issue. So then we would aim to look at the contingency projects from the LA County list, and then it's ranked by the MPO score because we're working within our MPO component. But then we also work with LA Metro, the County Transportation Commission, to determine, maybe the top scoring project, it's not quite enough funding, it's not the right fit. So we look at what's the best fit along with that ranking score.
Thank you. And when is that decision made, or how, in what venue, I guess, is that decision made?
So it may not happen if all those 15 projects just proceed. But if it kind of happens on a case by case basis, as maybe a project gets canceled or if there's cost savings, at that point we connect with the respective County Transportation Commission and discuss what would be the right fit for that amount of funding that's available.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. I am not seeing any other hands up in the room. Forgive me. We're not seeing any virtually. Okay. Warren, Rachel, thank you for your presentations. I just want to just thank you for your thoroughness. Solid job. I think anytime you can get only 3 or 4 people ask questions on 2 major items, that's a good sign that you're doing a thorough job. So just want to express my thanks to you and your teams for your presentations. Okay, very good. So we have items 1 through 6. These are, I'd be happy to entertain a motion for
I'll move
items.
the
Have a
2
first.
action items and the consent.
Very good. Second?
Calamation second.
Very good. All righty, Ed, I turn it over to you.
Javier Amezcua, Adele Andrade Stadler, Ryan Valius,
Yes.
Ryan Berkson,
Yes.
Daniel Brotman, Jeanette Burns, Denise Delgado,
Yes.
Jonathan Dimitru, John Dutre,
Yes.
Bubba Fish, James Gaisley,
Aye.
Jason Gibbs,
Yes.
William Go,
Yes.
Kurt Hagman,
Hagman, aye.
Laura Hernandez,
Yes.
Lauren Hughes, Mike Judge,
Judge, aye.
Fred Jung,
Aye.
Trish Kelly,
Yes.
Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Andrew Laura, Carlos Leon, Bridget Lewis, Richard Loa,
Yes.
Clint Lorimore,
Aye.
Ken Mann, Steve Manos,
Yes.
Ray Marquez, Larry McAllen,
Yes.
Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Tim McOsker, Dennis Michael,
Yes.
Linda Molina,
Aye.
Carol Moore,
Carol Moore, present, aye.
Juan Munoz Guevara, Ara Najarian,
Yes.
Frank Navarro,
Yes.
Nikki Perez, Bill Clark,
Yes.
Ed Reese,
Yes.
Gabriel Reyes, Crystal Ruiz,
Yes.
Ali Saleh,
Yes.
Steve Sanchez,
Aye.
Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Zach Schwank,
Yes.
Emma Sharif,
Yes.
Marty Siminoff,
Yes.
Ward Smith,
Yes.
Wes Speak,
Yes.
Karen Spiegel, Cynthia Sternquist.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Received for Sternquist. Steve Ty, Michael Vargas,
Yes.
Scott Voits, Donald Wagner, Colleen Wallace,
Yes.
Alan Wapner,
Yes.
Thomas Wong,
Yes.
Sen Wu,
They will abstain from item 1. Yes for the rest of it.
thank you. Mr. Chair, the motion passes with 44 in favor and 0 against and 1 abstention on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Ed. So let's go and move on to agenda item 7, which is an information item, regional recovery and resilience in the face of disasters policy discussion. I just want to note that we have 2 presenters on this item. We're going to take both presentations and then open it up for questions. So if you have any questions as they're talking, please just write it down or note it, and we'll make sure that we come back to you. Annie?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Just following the recent wildfires, SCAG held regional discussions in February through a joint policy committee meeting on rebuilding, recovering, and resilience, as you may all recall. The meeting included presentations from notable experts in planning, resilience, and disaster rebuilding and recovery. For today's policy committee meetings and the April meetings, each of the 3 policy committees will focus on emergency preparedness and resilience content that aligns with the purview of each committee. So we'll hear from experts today and hopefully generate some questions and discussions. And staff intends to then summarize the learnings from today's discussion as well as the April Policy Committee meeting discussion for the EAC and Regional Council in June. So for today's meeting, we have 2 presenters here at TC. We're joined by Amanda Fagan, Director of Planning and Sustainability at Ventura County Transportation Commission. She's going to present on developing emergency preparedness plans focused on transportation challenges. These plans highlight roles and responsibilities of transit providers, emergency response agencies, government, and non-governmental organizations. They also include communication procedures amongst agencies and to the affected communities. Additionally, we're joined by Godson Okereke, Deputy District Director of Maintenance for Caltrans District 7, who will speak about their emergency operations related to the state's highway infrastructure to help first responders access affected locations. So as the custodian and operator of the state highway system, Caltrans's emergency response priorities include damage assessment and route recovery on state highways. And so with that, we'll start with Godson to provide an overview of Caltrans's emergency response operations. Thank you.
Thanks. Where's the clip? Right there.
I think, is that your present?
No, this is not.
Okay.
Can they pull it up?
Yeah, can we pull up the other presentation real quickly? Sorry about that. I think we might have done switch.
Thank you.
So that'll take us.
Yeah, while we're going, yeah, we can go.
There should be a Caltrans presentation on file that we need to switch this presentation out with.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning, committee members. My name is Godson Okoriki. I'm the Deputy District Director.
I'm having a little hard time hearing
you hear me?
Godson. And Godson, nice to meet you in person. We've spoken numerous times by phone.
That is good.
But can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, I have to stoop a little bit. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today to talk about emergency operation related to highway system as we do in Caltrans. I'm going to be speaking mostly from the perspective of Caltrans District 7, which covers Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Basically, to give an idea, the table of content here today will be Caltrans District 7 responsibilities. We're going to talk about 4 phases of emergency management, and then we'll talk about our division participation. We support that, and then just touch a little bit on our director's order process, how we develop emergency projects to address situations, damages, or threatened facilities. So Caltrans, as the department responsible for the maintenance of our highway system to ensure the movement of goods and services, we make sure that we are ready to expeditiously and collaboratively and in an efficient manner respond to any incident or event that may threaten or damage our highway system assets. And this could be human cost or nature cost. So just to give an idea what we have in District 7, we have a total of 1,111 center line miles of highway system in District 7. You can divvy that up into interstate and non-interstate. 760 center line miles of major highways like Route 5, 710, 10 freeways, and then we do have 351 center line miles for conventional highways, such as Pacific Coast Highway and Route 27 to Panga Highway, for those that are familiar with that, just to give an example. And then we have 2,500 plus bridges, 21 tunnels, 40,000 culverts, 4,404 structures. These are just examples of the assets. Of course, we do have intelligent transportation system assets that includes, buried fiber optics and lighting systems and communication systems that convey information to our transportation management centers. To make sure that we're ready to address this, we do have throughout District 7, we have 48 maintenance stations that are scattered all over. And we equip and resource those maintenance stations to address issues of the location. A good example is maintenance station that's up in Lebec on Route 5 will be equipped with brine station that we use to preempt snow accumulation on the highway system. And in a location like Ventura County, with the topography, we will have plow systems and equipment that will be able to move earth very quickly if there's any slope erosion. So basically, Caltrans concept of emergency management follow the incident command system from the field level to the state emergency management, standard emergency management system, the SEMS, which complies with the National Incident Management System names. And to do this, to ensure that we're ready, we do go through the 4 phases. The first is preparation. What are some of the things we do to prepare and make sure that we're ready to address issues expeditiously, like I said? We do have emergency operation plans for various, it's PowerPoint up? No. Okay. We do have emergency operation plans for winter operation, for PSPS, which is power shutoff, public safety power shutoff. This is when utility companies are concerned about the weather and they inform us ahead of time that power will be shut off from several lines to avoid wildfire and all that. So we'll be ready to address lightings, our intersection signals and all that. Then we do have emergency operation plan for preparation for earthquake, wildfires, continuity plan to ensure that while we're responding to emergency, that we continue to perform the standard duties to ensure that our highway system is there to perform its duty and serve the people of California. We also perform drills and exercises and trainings through our emergency operations centers to make sure that staff is ready. You got it? To ensure that staff is ready in case of those events or incidents. We do maintain communication ahead of time with our first responders, CHP, CAL Fire, LA Fire, City of LA Fire, and fire departments, the first responders, to ensure that they approve our plans and how they can access locations in case of incidents. We also have emergency response plan for our tunnels, especially the lengthy ones, in case our ventilation systems fail or in case there's fire within the tunnels. We typically have a co-written emergency operation plans with the fire departments. Also, we have equipment ready at our maintenance stations and supplies to address issues at various locations. So when the incident already occurs or the event has taken place, our response plan is to immediately activate our emergency operation centers. It could be virtual, it could be in person. And we do have different sections of the emergency operations center. We do have, of course, the management section, we have the logistics, we have operation, communication, and other parts. So we make a decision on the necessary sections to activate. We do emergency traffic management. Our maintenance team will immediately begin to patrol the areas and make determinations on closures. It could be lane closure or full closures, and immediately implement the incident command system, which will begin to communicate with the local communities, representatives, and first responders as well. And the other thing we do is to immediately put together a committee we call MDAT, which is a damage assessment team that will go out immediately to scope damages that have occurred, and this is a combination of different subject matter experts, our geotech people, design, surveyors, and environmentalists together to determine scope of projects to immediately initiate, either have our maintenance team go out there to perform the repairs or initiate emergency projects. This goes into recovery. We have a process in place to initiate projects and get to contractors much faster than normal. This is an authority given to our director to legally circumvent some hoops through the California contract laws to get to contractors very quickly so that they can come on board. Depending on the nature of the damage, it could be what we call emergency first account, where we select a non-contractor that's familiar with the process to immediately get to work, or we go to emergency limited bid that will provide a sketchy plan on what the issue is and provide a couple of contractors, probably 4 of them, and they will provide their markups, and that will be the bidding system. So to quickly get to the repairs. We also support temporary traffic pattern changes, depending on the highway that's involved. Click that. Oh, it's ready? Yep. Okay. Where am I now? Let's see. I just talked about the preparation. Yeah. Okay. I think we're at recovery here. So at this point, we have at the recovery stage, we do have our emergency operations center open, and that serves as an avenue to communicate with CalOES, California Office of Emergency Services, through our headquarters emergency operation to either request for resources or local communities that are interested in utilizing state forces who reach out through CalOES and get an assigned mission task number that will allow us to utilize state resources outside state right away to help local communities. So that's a process that's made available in the case of emergencies. So after the recovery, when we stabilize the situation, then we'll go over to mitigation and prevention. So typically we implement implementation of lesson learned from previous incidents, roadside and watershed vegetation management to prevent future erosion of slopes. We do bridge retrofits and scour mitigations to strengthen the structural integrity of our bridges. We have culvert management that's in place to line and strengthen our culvert systems to handle flows that may come up as a result of incidents. We do have fire fuel reduction programs in place, creating fire breaks and brush removals in areas that are vulnerable to starting fires. We also do have our airspace management. These are areas that are below. In some areas, I don't know, you're familiar with the I-10 fire. We want to make sure that doesn't repeat, because what we try to do is to offer our open spaces below our highway systems to local communities for use, because however, we are putting tighter control on what is stored or utilized in those situations to prevent an eruption of any type from that. So we also perform consistent routine maintenance, rehabilitation, and protective betterments to ensure that our highway system is resilient to future either fire, flood, or any other type of event. We plan projects. As we plan projects, we build in resilience, will be clearances or utilization of materials that are fire retardant and other aspects. My planning counterpart here, colleague, who can speak more on that. So we have several divisions in Caltrans that participate in our emergency operations. In the case of an emergency disaster or event, our maintenance division will determine when our emergency operation activation takes place and at what level, and then notify headquarters emergency operations center and our headquarters communication. We activate damage assessment team, like I mentioned before, and disseminate damage information, collaborate and participate in local emergency operations center and coordination meetings, initiate recovery, emergency repair contracts, the director's order contracts these are all the responsibility of the Division of Maintenance, and submit district status reports to headquarters DOC on a regular basis. We consider the efforts needed to transition from response to recovery. We do have support from other, we do have support from other divisions. Our project delivery division will be responsible to, development division will be responsible for development projects to address damages. And then we have our geotech division that's responsible for monitoring ground movement and stability and making recommendations on project scope and nature. We engage district construction. Our district construction office will be responsible for administering those emergency projects. We also have our safety and traffic operations division that will confirm development of traffic management mitigation plans, confirm TMCs, updating quick map for the public, relaying emergency closures and estimated time of opening information to our headquarters communication, confirm any vehicle weight permits that may be necessary, waiver requests that may be necessary for trucks. Because of course there are restrictions on the movements, but in the case of emergency, rerouting may be necessary. So with that, we have our legal division looking at any proclamation or declarations that are in place to help with expediting permits and also assist Caltrans with receiving reimbursement from appropriate agencies, either federally or state. Our external affairs division will be responsible for briefing the media, confirm external communication strategies, and document any elected official inquiries and report to headquarters legislative affairs. Our information technology team ensures that our IT system are online. If they're offline, they can address those. So this is a quick overview. I just wanted to give an example of the recent fires that occurred, the Palisade fires along the PCH. That has resulted to 12 directors of the projects to the amount of 60 million. These projects are responsible for traffic control, retaining wall restoration, debris flow cleanup, embankment restorations, and roadway repairs. Also, we do have two major projects on Route 27. They're dealing with the same fire and storm events. What happened is right after the fire, we had rains that washed off the slopes. So the project on 27 responsible for embankment restoration and roadway repairs. So this is a short overview, and wanted to just touch on the PCH fires. If there are questions, then you can elicit answers to it. So with that, concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gutson. I understand there's a second presenter, so we'll bring them up.
Amanda, I believe she's going to present, and then we can open it up for Q&A.
Very good. Thank you.
Can we bring up the other PowerPoint? Yeah.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you this morning, Chair Sandoval and Vice Chair Judge. My name is Amanda Fagan, and I serve as the Director of Planning and Sustainability for the Ventura County Transportation Commission.
That's where it's going.
Let's see, where do we point? Which one? Oh, there we go. After the devastating Thomas Fire and Montecito debris flow cut off access between Ventura and Santa Barbara counties on the US 101, the Ventura County Transportation Commission and the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments collaborated to develop a transportation emergency preparedness plan with grant funding provided by a Sustainable Transportation Planning grant from Caltrans. The TEP addresses transportation challenges related to disasters that affect Ventura and Santa Barbara counties and outlines roles and responsibilities of transit providers, emergency response agencies, and government and non-governmental organizations. The TEP also outlines communication procedures and includes an inventory of the transit resources available across our two counties and across the many transit operators and partners. It will come as no surprise to anyone that Ventura and Santa Barbara counties are vulnerable to a variety of natural hazards and human-caused disasters, such as earthquakes, fires, debris flows, flooding, and transportation accidents. For example, US Highway 101 serves as both a main street connecting the cities within our two counties, as well as a primary connector between the LA metro area and the Central Coast. Half of the population of Ventura County lives within a 3-mile corridor on either side of US 101. And there are few alternative roadway routes when the 101 is affected by natural disasters or accidents. And when Interstate 5 is affected by inclement weather, wildfire, or accidents, through traffic is often rerouted through US 101, carrying volumes that far exceed its capacity. So the Transportation Emergency Preparedness Plan resulted in a transportation and transit seat at our county's Emergency Operations Center to coordinate resources across the various transportation and transit operators serving our counties, including the 8 transit operators that serve Ventura County. The TEP created an inventory of transportation and transit assets, resources, and contacts from which to draw upon during emergencies. The TEP also includes recommended strategies to improve the transportation response to emergencies. One such strategy included improving radio connectivity between the transit operators and buses to facilitate connectivity with the broader county communication system. That strategy is now being implemented through funding provided by SB 125 from the state legislature and through a partnership with the County of Ventura's Information Technology Office. So all of our buses across Ventura County will be equipped with radios that can connect to the emergency operations within the county's EOC. So the TEP also includes several options and scenarios for Emergency Operations Center concept of operations that include a transportation representative and coordinator for assistance to those with access and functional needs within the EOC command structure. The TEP acknowledges the challenging geographic context of evacuations, particularly for areas with fewer roadway options, such as the Ojai Valley, and that those transportation infrastructure and assets used for evacuations may be damaged by the very emergencies requiring the evacuation. The TEP calls for a multidisciplinary emergency response effort that incorporates communications, law enforcement, mass care, and transportation disciplines all working together. One of the most challenging areas of evacuation planning is, of course, ensuring that the needs of those populations with access and functional needs are addressed. From a transit planning and deployment perspective, ensuring that public transit and paratransit providers have the capacity to provide services during emergencies is critical. The TEP acknowledges the need to ensure that the transport mode is matched with the mobility needs of evacuees, such as wheelchair accessible vehicles, and then communicating to the public the procedures for accessing those resources. And of course, after the emergency has passed, providing re-entry support. During an evacuation, VCTC and our counterpart in Santa Barbara, SBCAG, fill a number of important roles as part of the Emergency Operations Center, including support for the provision of transportation resources, monitoring and reporting on the status of our transportation resources, including both facilities and vehicles, serving as a communications hub between the EOC and transit providers, facilitating transit resource requests from the EOC to transportation providers, and staffing the transportation seat in the EOC if requested. Transit providers also fill critical roles, such as responding to requests from the EOC or VCTC for emergency transportation services and evacuations, assisting the EOC and VCTC to secure emergency transportation resources for people with special needs, such as the elderly, individuals with disabilities or access and functional needs, and those without access to a car. And also providing information status updates from the field staff to the EOC through VCTC. Santa Barbara and Ventura counties recognize the importance of identifying and coordinating transportation resources that can be used in the evacuation of people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs during an emergency. Transportation that can accommodate wheelchairs, scooters, and other mobility devices will typically be needed in the event of a large-scale evacuation. Lift-equipped buses or vans may be an option. Transportation resources and agencies have been identified both among our general transit vehicles as well as paratransit and dial-a-ride services for those needing more personalized assistance. All transit buses in Ventura County are wheelchair or mobility device equipped. And when a bus is requested, we can send any bus that's available rather than having to ask specifically for one that can accommodate mobility devices. And I originally prepared this presentation actually for the Government and Disability Summit that was hosted by the County of Ventura last September. There is a wealth of information in the TEP that is focused on serving those with access and functional needs, including guidance in the Appendix E, which can assist agencies even outside of Ventura County to better assist the needs of persons who have limitations in the areas of seeing, hearing, speaking, moving, breathing, understanding, and learning. And while I won't go through those slides due to time constraints, I have shared those slides as part of the presentation that's included in your agenda packet today. So just a couple of quick examples of how the TEP has been put into action during more recent emergencies in Ventura County. Since its completion in 2019, the TEP has been put into action really more times than we wish it would be. After an atmospheric river storm in February of 2024 and a resulting landslide that closed State Route 150, which is the only direct route between Ojai and Santa Paula, while Caltrans worked to clear the debris flow and make the road safe for passage, VCTC established an emergency shuttle working with our Valley Express bus service operator to provide a transit service route around the road closure. Our buses are all wheelchair accessible and to accommodate and able to accommodate those with disabilities. We had been told to expect one passenger in a wheelchair, but in the end that didn't materialize. However, it was part of the discussion and the decision-making process to continue that service, even after Caltrans was able to open a walking path past the landslide. It was part of the decision to continue that service despite low ridership. In January of this year, VCTC staff and our contract operators assisted the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services and Cal State Channel Islands with evacuating students and staff from the campus during the Laguna fire, which broke out near the college. Emergency personnel requested a total of 6 45-foot coaches to assist with the evacuation and quickly utilize those resources to transport about 180 students off campus to the Camarillo Community Center, where Ventura County emergency staff were assisting evacuees. And when the evacuation order was lifted, VCTC was called upon again to transport students back to the campus with a total of 316 boardings between the evacuation and the repopulation. And the fact that this slide doesn't have a photo shows just how busy our operators were during the evacuation, that no one snapped a picture of the operation. So while the TEP has been incredibly valuable to improving our emergency response, we're also looking for ways to be more proactive to identify vulnerabilities and address those risks in advance. In 2024, we developed and submitted an application in January of 2025 to the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program to prepare a climate vulnerability assessment and action plan. The scope of work for this plan includes a countywide multimodal climate vulnerability assessment across all modes of travel, an outreach plan, a climate adaptation strategy and funding plan, an adaptation assessment and action plan, and a distillation of the Transportation Emergency Preparedness Plan to create a Transportation Emergency Preparedness Guide for individuals, families, and households. This task was actually born out of feedback that we received during the Government and Disability Summit that the TEP itself was targeted to practitioners and was more focused on emergency managers and transit operators and lacked actionable steps for the public to take in response to emergencies. So this idea and this task is to create a simple, easy-to-use guide and a plan that can be personalized for individuals, families, and caregivers, and others during an emergency or evacuation. Also, at the end of this planning effort, we hope to have a prioritized list of projects that will mitigate risks and prevent future transportation-related disasters and emergencies. So before I close, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues, Claire Grasty, who's our Director of Public Transit, and our Executive Director, Martin Erickson, both of whom had very active and engaged roles in the development of this plan. It actually was completed before I even came to VCTC, so I feel a little guilty up here presenting to all of you. And also just to note that the TEP is a living and a learning document. We're constantly updating procedures and actions, and most importantly, contacts across the different transit operators and resource agencies. And while the TEP itself is focused on our transit resources, we're also working to incorporate our other programs and assets, such as our freeway service patrol. We're leveraging contract options that allow us to extend service periods when there are significant weather events. For example, we have seen significant increases in motorist assists during periods of emergency. So we're leveraging those contract options, as well as looking for ways to incorporate emergency planning and incident management into our incident responders grant program awards that are funded through our Service Authority for Freeway Emergency and Motorist Aid programs. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda, for your presentation. We're going to go ahead and open it up to the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Not seeing any. Okay, I see.
Thank you so much. Since we're talking about planning, future planning to handle disasters, in cities in Riverside County, in the past cities where I live, there are freight trains that ride along the highways. And I'm wondering if there's an agreement, or could there be an agreement between Caltrans and the freight lines to either use the freight lines for delivering supplies to cities, or maybe take away debris as if it happens to be from a fire or a slide of some kind. If there's something like that is in the works.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I'll just be brief here. My name is Marlon Ridgesford. I am the Deputy District Director for Planning and Local Assistance at Caltrans District 7, also ex officio member of the TC, but just want to piggyback off of my colleague, Godson Okereke, for Maintenance Division. Of course, maintenance handles most of the near-term activities, but in terms of planning activities, long-term activities that Caltrans is engaged in, not just in District 7, which is LA and Ventura County, but also in our other partner districts, such as District 8 in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, as well as District 11 in Imperial and San Diego counties. We do have some contact with the railroad folks and also our freight partners, and with our headquarters counterparts as well, and just engaging with them on long-term coordination needs for climate stressors. We haven't dived directly into specific spot locations where there are freight needs for example, debris removal. But as those issues come up, we do have an opportunity to address those issues with them directly. So if you have any concerns about a particular location that you have in mind, we'd love to hear that so we can bring it up in our coordination meetings with our freight partners. So I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Should we go through our Caltrans rep at RCTC, give them to him and let him, or should we just contact Caltrans direct?
Yeah, you can go through your our RCTC representative, and I'm also happy to take that information and convey that to our partners as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I might, I'll just add that your question really speaks to the resiliency of rail as a transportation asset. And in Ventura County, after the Northridge earthquake, that really was the impetus for building out the Ventura County line and the Metrolink service, including the East Ventura station, because rail was able to be put back into service before the highways were really ready to take on that traffic. So we do recognize and appreciate the resiliency of rail and appreciate your comment. Thanks.
Thank you. President Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We sat through our last regional council meeting and heard a lot of what the cities and the counties doing to recover. Our two speakers here talked about how they react to certain situations. And I think it's super important that we all have our tabletops and we have our plans ready to go. I haven't heard anybody talk about resiliency in the way that I think about is what do you do to be prepared, not reacting, but over the years, what has really changed in Southern California? We were told that 85% of our housing stock's 60 years or older, so the housing stocks stay the same. Santa Ana has been around since we've been reporting big winds. And so what has really changed? Why is our risk different now? Why are the insurance companies are moving out? What's really risk is what we do as local government to prepare for fires, prepare for things. I know from personal experience, I went right along my fire department on a scheduled, I guess, pre-burn. Ray would know what this stuff is, but you burn the stuff ahead of time before the fire season. And we got called off from making smog for a smog AQM day. We know the environmental communities have really stepped up and say, when I was on the forestry sub task force, well, we can't trim or cut our trees because of the environment there. And I think this is what SCAG needs to be talking about more, is what policy changes should be looked at a state level so we are more resilient for the weather patterns we have every year. Okay, I sit in the Inland Empire. Santa Ana winds every year, multiple times. And now the only reaction is to turn off our power for days at a time. And that's the only thing we're doing. So I really encourage our team at SCAG with our partners to say, and I saw a brief little bit in our presentation at Caltrans where we do, mitigation on the freeways for wildfires, because people throw out the cigarettes. And I know from our fire department responding to 15, there's always fires along the freeways. But what can we be doing and recommending to the state legislature and changing some of the policies that got us to this place in the first place? Nothing's really changed besides California policies and maybe how much resources we're putting into preventive from disasters. Now, we're all going to be hit by the earthquakes. We can't stop that. But some fire mitigation, all the rest of it, we can be looking at when we set a resiliency plan, what does that entail? Not just from resources being spent. I know in my home city, the Chino Valley Fire they're a special district. They're not general fund. They have their own money and they're prepared every year. They have 1,000-foot buffers around the homes and all the rest of it. But we see with their constraints on local government as far as general fund, how much are we really spending toward preventing of these incidents in the first place, which I would contend is a lot cheaper than responding overall. So I'm hoping that our SCAG team and our partners can really look at these things and say, what can we do going forward to prevent some of these major disasters, or at least mitigate them a lot better than we've been doing lately? Thank you.
President Hagman, thank you for your comments and questions. I do have a question before I turn it back here. I understand we have a Resilience and Conservation Committee, and I'm wondering if that committee is attempting to answer some of the questions that you've raised about being proactive as opposed to just being reactive and the event happens and we're scrambling. Is there any staff member who might be able to speak to that?
We do have an EC committee that will be having simultaneously at this point, having similar discussions, more in purview with their particular committee matters. And so we'll be coming together with all of these issues, really. But the point about prevention is most definitely well taken.
Annie, just because on our website, it shows that there's a Resilience and Conservation Subcommittee. And so is that still a functioning committee, or is it?
I'm not aware of a specific subcommittee.
I just raise it because maybe that's where some of these conversations could be happening. But if it doesn't exist, that's a separate matter. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Me? Laura?
Right here,
Me?
right here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fagan and Mr. Can't pronounce your last name. Sorry. Oriki, for your presentations, and thank you for the good work you do in maintaining our roads and making those available post disasters, whether it's fire, earthquakes, floods. You've been a very vital partner in most local emergency response plans. One of the questions, I have a couple of questions. One is, what is what kind of work do you do, or interaction do you have with other modes of transportation, such as air and waterways? I know, being the OES director for Ventura County for over 16 years, we've had situations where 101, where the one was closed. The La Conchita landslide is a good example of that. Both freight and highway were closed. And there was volunteer efforts to transport people between the two counties of Santa Barbara and Ventura by boat. Are there any coordination efforts going on to access resources, either by water or by air?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. Appreciate that. What I'll say is this: in terms of our more long-term response and Caltrans District 7, we definitely work very closely with VCTC on these efforts. We do have partners, of course, at the California Air Resources Board on the state side, but also South Coast Air Quality Management District that we work with as well on their regulations and expectations. So in terms of air quality and in terms of conforming, we want to make sure that we provide multimodal connectivity in times of emergency. So we definitely work closely with Gold Coast Transit District and other small transit operators, and also larger transit operators as well. If there's any opportunities for connections that don't involve the roadway, or if the roadway is impacted. And in terms of waterways, we do work closely with county flood control districts, which do have a lot of jurisdiction, as well as our federal partners at Army Corps of Engineers, if there is need to make adjustments to any connectivity regarding waterways, waterways, and of course, working with our partners locally and in the regional manner. If there's any way for us to introduce new modes of transportation or enhance that, those are things that we definitely look at in times of emergency and in terms of future opportunities as well, if that makes any sense. So, and we can provide some examples if you'd like more information.
That's okay. Just wondering if there's been further work in that area.
Thank you.
I could just add, because of course, you're probably much more familiar with the operation to route folks around the 101 closure than even I am. But we do, as I mentioned, we have an extensive list of contacts and assets that have been inventoried to include aviation, and our commission is dual hatted as the Airport Land Use Commission. So we do have relationships with the County Department of Airports and our military assets as well. And so the TEP did incorporate our partners at Naval Base Ventura County to identify the assets that they have available to us, as well as the Channel Islands Air National Guard station. So there is at least an attempt to have an understanding of the broad range of assets that are available that can be called upon during an emergency.
Very good. Thank you so much for the good work. You know, the TEP was not there when I was there with the county. And so I'm really happy to see that's in place. And just for Supervisor Hagman's comments, these are not reactive plans. These are years of long-term planning that are put in place based on lessons learned, based on policy, based on a statewide standard emergency management system, which we should all be familiar with. And I'll try not to get as passionate as I did last time at our last meeting, but these plans are there, and they prepare us. They help us mitigate against disaster, reduce the impact of these disasters. We just have to pay attention to them and open them up and get trained on them, because there's a lot of coordination that goes on behind the scenes that our emergency management community engages in. And I think we're one of the most well-prepared states in the United States. We are the ones who started the standard emergency management system, which went national. So these plans are there, and there's, I'm sure, more work we can do. But the collaboration, the coordination, and the planning is the best way to mitigate against our disasters. So thank you for the good work.
Thank you. Before we go to you, Ms. Molina, Annie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just a clarification in response to your previous question on the Resilience and Conservation Subcommittee. I'm told that that was for Connect SoCal. It previously met between 2022 and January 2023. It is not currently an active subcommittee.
Thank you for.
Good morning again. I just wanted to comment on Mr. Hagman's comments. I live in a rural city, small city, and who's playing catch up with infrastructure improvements and what have you, and growing population. But we were fortunate to get a heli hydrant in our county to connect with, so helicopters, you know, when there's a fire, can swoop down and suck up the water. And I'm recommending any city that has the opportunity to apply for those. We went through our county. That's a great way to plan ahead, because you know, access to water is and time. Those are two things that work together. So I just wanted to suggest that. We're very happy to have that in our city.
Thank you. Andrew Lara?
Yeah, thank you. So for my day job, I'm a critical care director for a private ambulance company, and I oversee paramedics, respiratory therapists, and nurses. I'm a nurse myself. And so I work for a private ambulance company, private provider, and our main station is in Irwindale. So the night of the Eaton fire, my shift started at 9 p.m. and I was driving up the 605 and I saw the strip of fire in the San Gabriel Mountains. And when I got to our dispatch, we were overloaded with phone calls. And the phone calls were coming from private residences of family members calling on behalf of other family members, or people calling on behalf of them, of their loved ones, because they were stuck on ventilators. And I know that subset of our population exists because I've serviced them and I've been in their homes and I transport them. And I know for a fact that there were a few residents who actually perished because they lacked the resources to be evacuated. Because our fire department normally handles that, right? When someone's sick on a ventilator, our 911, they do a great job. But they were fighting fires. And their resources were stretched beyond capacity to drive up to that one home with someone on a ventilator. So my question is, for that population, and this also included nursing homes, because they were calling us scrambling to get their patients out. The next morning, LA County did a great job because they had their EOC up and running. And then they had all the private ambulance companies on the line dishing out, hey, go here, so on and so forth. But at the actual time of emergency, there were very relatively few services. So, you know, there's plenty of questions to be asked about that point in time, but I guess my question is, I'm concerned about those bedbound patients who live in our communities and those patients stuck on ventilators where, you know, it's not just someone can pull up a station wagon and pull them out, right? You need a respiratory therapist, you need a nurse, you need someone familiar with that type of equipment. Do we have a database of those patients that reside in our community? I think Edison does, right? For power. But is that then shared with our 911 communities? Is that shared with our private providers so that in a time of great emergency, we already know where these people reside? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the question. And I won't begin to say that I have all the answers on this one, but I will echo that as a concern that we heard during our conversations with the disability community at last September's summit, that this is a really difficult problem and something that we need to continue to work as a community on tackling. My understanding is that there are limitations in terms of information that can be shared because of privacy restrictions. And so there has been talk of voluntary disclosure and developing lists and ways to contact and communicate families that do have those types of challenges. So again, I can't say that I have the answers to this problem, but I will just say that it's something that that in Ventura County we're aware of and working on. One thing we've sort of toyed with the idea of is using our incident responder grant program, which we use our service authority for freeway emergencies or safe motorist aid funding to provide grants to first response agencies to purchase equipment that can be used in the event of freeway and highway emergencies. And so we've thought about, could we use that program to allow our first responders to access the kind of vehicles and emergency equipment that they would need during an emergency that maybe isn't as quickly accessible as a transit operator, but could be available so that our sheriffs aren't, for example, having to load up folks from nursing homes into their sheriff. They could have the kind of, so that the sheriff or the fire department could have the kind of vehicle that they need to help move patients. So it's something we're thinking about and trying to figure out how we might help to address that challenge.
Thank you, Amanda. And Mr. Lara, thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, it was, I don't know if for any of you, it was just obviously a real story of people that you work with and help serve, and they were, there was really nothing for them at that moment. My hope is that as we continue this conversation around climate resilience, that we could begin to answer some of these questions, or at least raise these questions to the bodies that are responsible for overseeing the system. So appreciate that. You want to add an additional comment? And then Ms. Molina, this will be the final comment here. So we have one more item. Okay, thank you.
Just real briefly, I read a book about 2 years ago. It's called The Deluge. And it talked about all this. It talked about the insurance market going up as a result of climate change. And it talked about a widespread fire throughout Los Angeles. And then the other thing that caught my eye, because I'm a council member with the city of Pico Rivera, it talked about the Whittier Narrows Dam, right? And there being an arc storm and the Whittier Narrows Dam collapsing. And you have at least a plus 1 million people that would be affected. So, these things are known to us. They've been known to us. And I think these past fires were just a real bit wake-up call. But I think it's a point well taken by Member Hagman on money needs to be spent for prevention, right? And we also need to critically think through these items as they arise. But thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Molina?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I lived in Los Angeles during the Northridge earthquake, and transit systems were used to transport people when they have mass fires and even just apartment buildings. So the transit agencies would be available to handle that probably.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any more hands up, not seeing any hands up virtually. So Annie, agenda item 8, Regional Mobility Hub Strategy Update. We have a presentation. I'd like to try to get it in, and maybe I can ask the presenter approximately how long is the presentation? I'm mindful of the time that we have regional council at noon, I think. We do actually. Actually, you have time. Very good. Thank you.
I timed myself. I think I can get done in 3.5 minutes if I talk swiftly.
Take 5.
Good morning, Transportation Committee. I am Serenia Matute. I'm a senior regional planner on the Partnerships, Technology, and Innovation team. I'm here to provide an update on SCAG's Mobility Hub program. Oops, there we go. Oops. Mobility hubs are the foundation for multimodal planning and promoting mode shift. They're important for helping our region achieve our greenhouse gas reduction targets. A well-designed, actively programmed mobility hub can also create a sense of place. Inclusion of mobility hubs and new construction can also support residential and commercial transportation demand management, or TDM, while helping cities and developers overcome community concerns for new development. This slide, so SCAG's mobility hub work was recommended as part of our Mobility as a Service feasibility white paper that was published in 2022. Our agency has since developed a regional mobility hub strategy as part of Connect SoCal, and we recently finished our mobility hub design and implementation guide. As part of our strategy, SCAG established 6 mobility hub types based on land use and transportation features. In addition to existing land use and transportation characteristics at each hub type includes a list of elements that are highly recommended, or not applicable. It's important to note that the design and access elements can vary significantly based on topography, property lines, and other local context factors. What may work for one community may not necessarily work for another. So to support implementation, we developed a mobility hub design and implementation guide to help practitioners develop and design their own mobility hub networks. It's around 55 pages plus appendices, and it's organized into 3 parts. Sorry about that. It also includes conceptual designs for 4 priority projects from across the SCAG region: Burbank, Fontana, and Moorpark, and Paris. So here are 2 sample pages from the design guide. On the left is a matrix called Design Considerations. It's intended to help planners determine how design considerations for a mobility hub, including access points and hierarchy. And then on the right is a kit of parts matrix assigned by mobility hub typology. One of the strengths of a mobility hub network is consistency. It helps customers know what to expect when they come to a mobility hub, and they can anticipate it based on the size and the location. This is by no means prescriptive, as our guide stresses. Mobility hub site selection and amenities should be context specific. We recognize and encourage localities to develop their own mobility hub strategies. Nevertheless, we can offer this as a foundation that staff can draw upon for their own work. So this slide goes over our stakeholder engagement process. As part of developing the guide, we conducted extensive outreach, including some public partners, and we also conducted a mobility hub workshop hybrid that included over 50 people in attendance, including 25 in person. And this slide goes over additional stakeholders. We worked with our county transportation commissions, planning directors, regional transit technical advisory committee, the Safe and Active Streets Working Group, transportation leaders across the region, and other mobility hub partners. And then lastly, looking ahead, SCAG is developing our regional pilot initiative mobility hub program area. And we anticipate selecting between 1 and 2 of the cities that received our conceptual designs during the guide process for demonstration during fiscal year 26. SCAG will also be doing outreach to promote the guide, which will officially go live on our website, scag.ca.gov, later this month. We'll be also conducting a mobility hubs themed Toolbox Tuesday on March 18th. Encourage everyone to sign up and attend because we have really amazing guest speakers. I'm excited. They're going to include reps from the Riverside Transit Agency, LADOT with their partner Transito, and Cal State Dominguez Hills. We'll also be presenting the design guide back to the Regional Transit Technical Advisory Group. And we expect to continue our collaboration with the LA28 Games Mobility Executive Mobility Hub Subcommittee Partners, which was a lot of words. Alrighty. Thank you. And I am happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Not seeing any. Are there any members of the committee who wish to speak? Fish?
Thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Is SCAG a member of the Mobility Executives committee with the games on mobility hubs?
Yes,
okay,
we are.
Okay, wonderful.
Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and move on to the chair's report. We have several new members to our committee. I'm going to go ahead and announce them. We're going to start with Javier Amezcua from Calipatria, part of the Imperial County Regional Office. Are you here? Okay, some of you are online. I noticed Mr. Fish's is Brian Bubba Fish. Can I say that? Is it good? Okay, it's in there. Why did they call me? Yeah, very good. Brian Bubba Fish from Culver City, part of the West Side Cities COG. David Reddy from Palm Springs, the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. William Go from Regional Council District 14, City of Irvine. Just wave your hand if you're here. Great, very good. Ryan Bellius, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. My apologies. Regional Council District 19, City of Anaheim. Fred Young, City of Fullerton, that's the Orange County COG. District number 21. Butch Twining, Regional Council District number 64, City of Huntington Beach. Zhen Wu, City of San Clemente, the Orange County COG. And Carlos Leon, Orange County Transportation Authority. There may be somebody I've missed. I apologize. Is there anybody's name that I did not call? Great. See, David, we're okay. It's okay, David. You're a little traumatized that we may have missed somebody. All right. During the April Transportation Committee meeting, we will hold elections for the 2025-26 chair and vice chair positions. If you're interested in nominating someone or yourself, please reply to it's aguilarm@scags.ca.gov. We'll make sure that you get that information and submit the name of the individual or individuals no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Nominees must be RC members, regional council members, to be considered for the chair and vice chair positions. The term of the office for the newly elected chair and vice chair will commence upon the adjournment of the General Assembly business meeting on May 1st, 2025. On February 20th, the Office of Regional Council Services sent out the initial email to each of the committees with details about the nomination process and the deadline for submittal. And staff is certainly available for questions. And that concludes my chair report. But do you want to say something? That's okay. We all do it. No worries. And so Metrolink report, Marty Simonoff from the city of Brea.
At the last Metrolink meeting, in October 2024, Metrolink introduced a new schedule, which increased weekday service by 32 new trains to a total of 178 trains on each weekday. Metrolink also updated its service schedule on January 27th, 2025 to improve service reliability with key focus on changes to San Bernardino line. Changes include a revised schedule to enhance reliability, reduce delays, improve connections between Montclair and LA Union Station. These updates address the on-time performance issues identified after the October 24 schedule. Federal regulations require a service equity analysis and public outreach for major initiation of the process at the February 2025 meeting. Community engagement includes a public comment period, multilingual outreach, efforts, online surveys, e-blasts, and a virtual bilingual workshop on March 26, 2025. One of the big ones was the state update. The California Air Resources Board has withdrawn its request for a federal waiver from the EPA, which was needed to enforce the April 2023 in-use locomotive regulation. The rule would have required Metrolink and other rail operators to upgrade locomotive technologies to reduce emissions with the 2030 year as a transition year. Without the waiver, key elements of the regulations may not have been enforceable, and staff is going to continue to monitor this.
Marty, thank you for your presentation. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I will just remind folks that the registration is open for the SCAG Regional Council on May 1st, May 2nd. If you are planning to attend, please take that opportunity to register. We're looking forward to celebrating our 60th anniversary out in the desert. So please do register if you are able to attend. And then very briefly, the SCAG scholarship opportunity is currently open. The deadline for applications to be submitted is Friday, March 21st. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any member announcements at this time? Not seeing any. Well, everyone, thank you for your